turned a blind eye to C-311. They are calling on them to legislate the abuse of a pregnant woman and the infliction of harm on a preborn child as aggravating circumstances at the sentencing point within our criminal code. Yes, it is. The second one is in regard to sexually explicit information and demeaning depicting sexual violence on our online that is absolutely available to young people. It's made available for commercial purposes and is not protecting any effective age verification methods. Apparently, this Parliament recognizes that the harmful effects of the increasing accessibility of sexual explicit materials online for young persons is an important public health and public safety concern. And therefore, they are calling on this House to adopt Bill S-210, Protecting Young Persons from Exposure to Pornography Act. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Petitions, the Honourable Member for Kitchener South Hespeler.
Madam Speaker, it is my honour to rise in this House to present a petition signed by 75 members of the Canadian-Ukrainian community in the Waterloo region, calling on all parliamentarians to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to Ukraine by supporting BC 57, the updated Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, which was requested by Ukraine. This will assist them in their rebuilding efforts of the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin. I'm pleased to report to the community that this bill was in fact passed last week with the support of all members of Parliament, save and except those members of the Conservatives.
So just a reminder that the honourable members are to do summary of the petitions and not give additional information as far as for their points of view or to use it as an SO31. The presenting petitions, the honourable member for Langley Aldergrove.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to present a petition signed by 75 people in my community to draw Parliament's attention to the plight of Pakistani Christians who are persecuted for their faith, who do not receive the protection from their government, and who have fled to Thailand, where they continue to face persecution while they await their Canadian visa applications to proceed. They are calling upon the House of Commons to create a special status for Pakistani asylum seekers who continue to suffer mistreatment in Thailand, and to renew with increased urgency the Government of Canada's 2016 recommendation made in Thailand on the need for asylum seekers to have access to legal status. A number of the people who signed this application are themselves refugees from Thailand, from Pakistan via Thailand. In these circumstances, they're very happy to have Canada as their new home, but they remain concerned for those left behind. Thank you.
Petitions, the honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have two petitions to table today. The first petition is from residents in my community of Kelowna Lake Country and surrounding area, and it refers to natural health products, NHPs, as being a basic everyday products, and that the changes that the Health Canada is looking at doing will cause consumer prices to rise significantly and consumer choice to decline drastically. When inflation is at an all-time high and access to health care is at an all-time low, Health Canada recently proposed new and significant fees to import, manufacture, and sell NHPs at the same time they are implementing new labeling laws. And so the petitioners are calling on the Minister of Health to work with the industry with adjusting Health Canada's proposed cost recovery rates to accurately reflect the size and scope of the industry, and that the new regulatory changes should only be considered once the self-care framework is adjusted and backlogs are cleared and operations are running efficiently, and there are policies and procedures in place to ensure stable operation and selection of natural health product choices that they continue for Canadians. The second petition that I have today is with respect to the carbon tax. And so petitioners, just to summarize, talk about the combination of carbon tax 1 and carbon tax 2, which means that Canadians will pay an extra 61 cents for each litre of gas. This is making life more expensive for Canadians in a cost of living crisis. And so the petitioners are calling on the Government of Canada to have the House recognize the failure of Carbon Tax 1 and call on the government to immediately cancel the clean fuel regulations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Presenting petitions, the Honourable Member Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm very pleased to rise today to present a petition on behalf of my constituents who are firefighters and in industries related to firefighting. They're very concerned over the very poor provisions for volunteer firefighters, the very low tax credit that they believe is not large enough to support firefighters that are volunteer firefighters that are particularly needed in rural communities that do not necessarily have the fiscal capacity to support a full-time firefighter force. The petitioners are asking this government to implement changes to support volunteer firefighters, and they're also calling on this House to pass Bill C-310 to raise the tax credit for volunteer firefighters. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Presenting petitions. Présentation de pétitions. Questions on the order paper. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask that all questions be allowed to stand.
Agreed and so ordered. Orders of the day, ordre du jour.
Orders of the day, government orders, government bills, commons. Resuming consideration of a motion respecting Senate amendments to Bill C-35, Canada Early Learning and Childcare Act.
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands had 18 minutes, the last time that this matter was before the House.
Well, thanks again, Madam Speaker. And as I said before, it's always an honor to rise in this House, and it's great to be able to speak about such an important issue as what we are talking about here today, which is childcare, and in particular the Senate amendments. So, Madam Speaker, I mean, again, I guess the fact that we are back here today goes to show, so I'm sure my colleagues here today would agree that there's always room for improvement when we are looking at any piece of legislation. But it's especially true when we're dealing with an NDP Liberal government, such as we are now. And that is what we tried to tell them during the regular process of debate the first time through. If this Liberal government decides that it wants to involve itself in something, it really needs to make sure that it gets things right and doesn't create a mess of things. As usual, these Liberals chose not to take their responsibility seriously. Instead, they tried to blame us and play political games at the expense of Canadian families. They claimed we were delaying the bill when we were simply doing our job as the official opposition. Our Parliament is set up in certain ways for a reason. We have to consider and review what the government does carefully, or else there's trouble. And look what happens if we don't. Was it a delay when a few months went by for senators to go through the bill and add this amendment? As a result, we are having another round of debate and a vote in the House. But in this case, that's probably a good thing. Many people agree from each party that the bill will be better for it. If we consider that it's dealing with childcare, which is a complex and important issue, I think it's fair to say that there are other things we also need to consider. We don't have to worry about a delay so much as the Liberal government making big announcements and rushing through legislation so they can try to look good and feel good about themselves. Canadians living in the real world have a lot of problems to face. They're counting on us to deliver solutions in the right way. Along with protecting official language minority communities, which is now reflected in C-35, Conservatives propose other amendments which were rejected by the NDP Liberals, including, Mr. Speaker, an amendment which would have basically done the exact same thing that we are debating here today with this Senate amendment, was voted down previously by the NDP Liberal government at committee. Mr. Speaker, the lack of respect for parents from this government is quite apparent. And in different ways, we have heard members of the Liberal NDP government suggest that parents don't have the right to raise their own children. Recently, one of them went so far as to say that there is no such thing as parental rights. There is a dangerous idea which the far left has, and it seems to be gaining ground on that side. They think children should belong to the state and not.
Appel au règlement, je reconnais l'honorable député.
On a point of order.
In the House. Nous allons vérifier.
We'll check.
Nous n'avons pas le quorum, donc
We don't have quorum, so we're going to ring the bells.
nous avons le quorum.
We do have quorum, so the honourable member can continue his speech. There's 15 minutes left.
Well, now they all come running back in to hear this marvelous speech, which I'm getting, despite the heckles from the NDP guys over here. But
We're going to talk about the far left.
all right. So, thankfully, we haven't got to the point yet that they want to get us to. But when we hear people deny the primary role of parents to raise their own children, that's the line of thinking that will start to take us in a dangerous direction. Our approach to childcare must respect parents and their choices. We can't expect the NDP Liberal coalition to get things right if they don't have that solid foundation to begin with. Speaker, childcare is crucial. Canadian parents know it better than anyone. As Conservatives, we want to meet the needs of families, and we understand how valuable and important it is to do so. It's common sense, especially in today's world, which moves at a rapid pace. We need to maintain and support the family unit. Children are a gift. Those of us who are parents know how much they change our lives. They give us purpose and direction. They bring joy and pride as they grow up, despite some of the difficulties that we sometimes have to go through as parents with our kids. Not to sound too cliche, but our kids are the future of society. That's why it's so important that we provide the right support to parents as they raise the next generation. There are people out there looking for options that are affordable and help to build the lifestyle they want for their family. For many, it's a struggle, and I've heard about it in my own riding, which is largely rural. Last month at a town hall in East End, as I was talking about at the beginning, I was asked about the lack of access and spaces in our area. It confirmed for me that not much has changed since I did, or as part of another town hall in Maple Creek a couple years ago, where one of the prominent issues was also childcare. I would say that as the most rural province, Saskatchewan is in a unique situation. We have so many small towns that are so spread out, so there is an especially stark contrast between urban and rural. The access to childcare is linked to our access to workers. Business owners in the Southwest are struggling to hire, but it wasn't a shortage of applicants. It was a shortage of daycare facilities for potential hires to have their kids taken care of. So unfortunately, these interviewees moved on, got another job outside of Maple Creek, and left these businesses still wanting. What's sad, Mr. Speaker, is that Maple Creek is just a phenomenal town. Houses are still decently affordable, the school is great, and it's not too far from the Cypress Hills. It's a quick drive to some of the other major centres in both Alberta and Saskatchewan. It's just an all-around great place for a family. Yet people are choosing to not raise their kids there, in part because they can't find access to childcare. We want to see this bill include a wide range of childcare options, which should be available to parents. And that's what the NDP Liberals rejected. You know, one of the amendments that we had proposed was to make sure that we included all types of providers, private providers, home-based providers, alongside public and not-for-profit providers, just to make sure that all types of home care options are eligible. In fact, in Saskatchewan, there's over 87,574 children under age 6 in our province, but the majority of them are not in licensed care and receive no benefit from the implementation of the government's child care strategy. This government has a one-size-fits-all approach for parents. The bill says to Canadians, it's okay, don't worry about it, let the government take care of your kids. And that's basically it. The bill overlooks many families who want to have some other options, including stay-at-home parents. But many Canadians don't want that from the government. They believe that what is best for their family is that they stay home with the kids and live off of one income. By no means is it easy, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience. It requires determination and sacrifice, but for my family and for thousands and thousands of Canadians, the right decision is to have a stay-at-home parent. Last time when I spoke on this bill, I did share my own family's experience with stay-at-home parenting, and I'd like to touch on that point once again here. Shortly after my wife and I were married, and while our first child was on the way, we sat down and we discussed how we can make it work for my wife to be a stay-at-home mom, because that was something that she truly wanted and was near and dear to her heart. And we also thought that that was what would be best for our kids in the long run. The decision to live on one